Coming up, we build a V8 garden sprinkler.
After that,
I scratch my beard. Making plans.
I'd rather push it into the river.
And will Alpina live again?
Aloha and welcome to part 10 of Project Chicago, the notorious Alpina B7. In this episode, we're continuing the money-burning marathon and building yet another engine for that thing. As we learned in the previous video, N62 B44 block and Alpina H1 are exactly the same, so we're using that as our basis and building our own Alpina H1 engine. So let's start and see where we end up. First, we gotta start with the most boring part of this process, which is cleaning and prepping the block. Unlike the previous block that went into a hot tank after the machine shop was done with it, so I only had to do minor cleaning, flushing the oil channels and cleaning the sealing surfaces. But here we got to do everything, so we're going to start with the head gasket surface, clean that, and then every other sealing surface around the engine, and then we can wash the entire block. To clean up the block surface, we're not going to use anything aggressive or abrasive. I know many use Scotch-Brite or Bristol discs and scruff up the surface, but we don't want to do that. We want to preserve this lovely machined surface so that the head gasket can seal as best as possible. So we're going to use a plastic scraper that can't damage or scratch anything, and a Victorine sealant remover. This stuff works really well. So spray it on the carbon fiber and just dab it onto the surface, let it do its thing, and then just wipe it off. Just finished, and although it might not look like it, the surface is properly prepped. We don't care how it looks visually, this discoloration or these embedded lines. You can't feel any of that underneath your finger or fingernail, and it's not going to stop the head gasket from sealing. What matters here is how it feels underneath your fingernail, that there's nothing catching and that the surface is perfectly smooth, especially in the areas like on the top of the cylinders, that all of this is nice and smooth and clean. Then around here, coolant jackets, that all of that is nice and smooth. So this side is done, now I'm gonna do the other one. So this baked on carbon, dirt, whatever it is, I'm using steam to loosen it up and then scrape it off. This side is done as well. Everything is nice and smooth and ready for the brand new head gasket, except we're far, far away from that. So let's continue cleaning. For the valley pen gasket surface, we can use fine Scotch-Brite. This is not as important as the head gasket because the plain rubber gasket seals here, and it's perfectly fine to use Scotch-Brite. So now I'm going to go ahead and open all of the plugs on the block, the front, sides, and the back, and then we're going to take it outside and wash the entire block. Nice. Since this is alu-sealed block, we gotta be careful what we use here to clean it. I have a ton of degreasers and cleaners in the garage, but I'm not gonna use any of that because I'm afraid it might attack alu-seal and then it's game over. So I'm gonna use a ton of brake cleaner, a straw to flush every single passage, coolant passage, oil passage, and then a ton of compressed air as well. And then just rinse it out with water. So let's start with brake cleaner first. sprinkler. I can use the old block to make a garden sprinkler. Except I don't have a garden. Made a fountain. After that. So, you have a choice if you have a blown up Alpina engine. You can make a sprinkler or like a fountain something. It's quite nice. Hey, all right, another round of brake cleaner to displace the water, and then we can blow the crap out of this block. Oil channel, coolant passage, as well as the threaded holes. We need to make sure everything is dry. That's the block thoroughly clean, so we can cover it up and start cleaning the crankshaft. And that's the crankshaft thoroughly clean. Put it on the side for now. Before we start, I just like to point out that I'm not going to go in extreme detail and explain every single thing that I'm doing. I've already done that in the original rebuild video. It took me ages to make it, so if you want to see step by step how to assemble N62 engine, you can refer to that one. Now I want to speed up things just a little bit, at least on the video, put this thing back together and see if it works. Just cleaned and prepped everything for assembly real quickly. I also measured the crankshaft and it's in perfect condition, perfectly round and not out of spec, so we're good there. Main bearings, new main cap bolts, the old ones that we're going to use when we plastic gauge the journals, freshly cleaned main caps, and upon further inspection, I'm actually reusing new/old bearings that were in the previous engine for 100 kilometers. There's nothing wrong with them. This white layer, it's a sacrificial layer of sort of bedding coating, and you can remove that with your fingernail, but there are no scratches or anything like that on them. I also use micrometer to measure them. I just had to buy two new upper ones, yellow and yellow, because that's different on this block. But no need to waste money and replace something that's not worn out. One final wipe. Oh, this needs to be clean and oil-free. Bearing numero uno. Make sure it's flush with the surface here. You can see that the upper bearings don't have that coating. So here's one that's been used in the other engine, and it looks exactly the same as the brand new one. Now we're going to use the plastic gauge, and in order to get correct readings, the crankshaft needs to go in dry first, torque everything to spec, get the readings, remove the crankshaft, put assembly lube, and then we're going to do the final torque with brand new bolts. Y'all ready for this? Carefully. Very, very carefully. Like that. The caps are stamped. You have number 1 here, and this notch here points towards that side of the block. Rubber mallet. Old bolts. I like to drive the bolts in by hand, that way I can make sure the threads are clean. Torque time. That's all of them torqued. 100 degrees. Clearance for the main bearings is 0.024 to 0.052 millimeters. Plastic gauge is not going to give us an exact measurement, but rather a ballpark. Journal number 1, the clearance is less than 0.050, but not as big as 0.038. So it's something in between. We don't need the exact number, we just need to know that it's within spec, which it is. Here's another one, less clearance than 0.50, but more than 0.038. So something in between. Here's the final tally. All of the main bearings are well within spec, so we can proceed and bolt the crankshaft permanently. Remove the crankshaft. First order of business, piston oil squirters, which I thoroughly cleaned. Wipe the bearings for the final time. Now we're going to apply assembly lube. Only on the bearing, nowhere else. Crankshaft going in. Nice. Lubed up bearing in the cap as well. Brand new bolts. Now we're going to remove the bolts on the fifth cap and then hit the crankshaft with the rubber mallet on the front and the back, and that way we can align the thrust bearing. Rubber mallet. Just a little bit, nothing too crazy. Torque it again to 20 newton-meters. Now we got to do the 100-degree angle, and I'm going to use old school dial torque gauge. My digital torque wrench has a short handle, and I want a bit more leverage. I mean, I can still do it with the digital one, but it's easier if I use this thing and a big pry bar. That goes there, zero it out. $100. Let's see how it spins. Nice. So you can use one finger to make sure it's spinning smoothly. There's no binding or resistance or a tough spot. And this one is turning over beautifully. Fun fact, I'm using my original rebuild video. That way I don't need to look up torque specs or scratch my head in which order to go. And that's the crankshaft installation done. Now we're going to start checking the piston ring gap, and this is the factory specification for this engine in the repair manual. We want to be close to this limit, on the limit, or slightly above because of forced induction. The engine is supercharged. And as before, Alpina pistons use specific piston rings. These are the specifications, if anyone ever needs them, but I have to mix and match to get one correct set. So I'm using Mahle for the first and third, and Hastings for the second ring. So first, clean the bore, fresh oil, and gently put it in. So now we're going to use a piston to push it in evenly and take the measurement to about there. So first start with 0.20, goes in easily. 0.25 goes in easily. 0.30 goes in, but not all the way. So I would call that something in between 0.25 to 0.30. Pull it out, put it back in the bag and tag it. Now I'm gonna go around and repeat this process for every cylinder and every piston ring. Just finished checking the gaps on all of the rings. On number one, we are perfect. On the third one, you can't exactly check it because it's a 3-piece oil scraper ring, but I did throw one of them in there and got this measurement, so we're good. On the second one, we are slightly over, but again, we want that because supercharged engine. I also talked to Robert about this, if this is going to be a problem, that it's slightly over, and he told me, and I quote, "Stop wasting time and put that thing together. It's not a space shuttle." So that's what we're gonna do. I'm cleaning up the pistons and I just wanted to quickly show you this. So I bought 2 used pistons because remember we had 2 dead pistons in the previous engine, and I have hell of a time, well, a very difficult time removing the carbon from these. It's really caked on. I tried throttle cleaner, brake cleaner, steam, and some other chemical over there, but I bought this Protec Carbon X 2-component stuff, and you're supposed to use this. I mean, you can use it with the piston still in the car, in the engine. You have a long straw that comes with it. You remove the spark plugs, you put the foam inside, and then you suck it out with the vacuum cleaner, and then you neutralize it with the second component. So I spray this piston down here, and it's removing it effortlessly. Super, super easily. So I'm gonna spray it on this one as well. And this stuff is very difficult to remove. It's really, really baked on. Look at that. It's going to be one superbly clean piston. So if you have heavy carbon buildup in the engine, I can definitely recommend this. It definitely works. Because as I said, I tried a bunch of other chemicals and nothing worked. And this is doing, look at that, a wonderful job. Not sponsored, I have no affiliation with this company, but this seems like genuinely good product. It cleaned up lovely, really did. So I already cleaned and prepped everything. Lube up the pin, find the box that I labeled. First, the oil control ring, which is a 3-piece set. First, we're gonna install the expander. It is important that the ends of the expander are touching and not overlapping like that, just touching. Coat it with oil and install it. And now the bottom rail, coated with oil as well. And the top rail. Make sure it moves freely in the piston groove, and then spread out the openings. So one opening here, here, and here. So 45 degrees offset of each other. Now the second one, coated with oil as well. And for this, we're gonna use piston ring pliers. Like that. Of course, pay attention on the markings on the piston ring. Here it says stop, so that goes towards the top of the piston. Now we're gonna offset all of the gaps by 120 degrees. So like a Mercedes sign, for example, we'll do this one there, and this one there. Oil it up. Oil up the piston skirt. And now we're going to expose the skirt. Like that. And now the rod bearings, I had to replace 2 of them, well 4 in total, on 2 journals that were scratched along with the crank. For example, this one. You can see a line there and you can feel it underneath your fingernail. So this one had to be replaced. The rest of them are actually in good condition. They don't have any scratches or wear. I've even measured them and they're safe to be reused. But here we're gonna go with brand new ones. So make sure this is clean. And now our nifty tool. So first we're going without assembly lube because we're going to use plastic gauge. Make sure that the cylinder is clean. Clean carbon fiber and brake cleaner. Oil up the cylinder. We also have specific orientation in which we install it. So now you got to pull it up. Now you can remove the tool. Plastic gauge. The torque for the rod caps is 5 Newton meters, then 20 Newton meters, and then 70-degree angle. So first 5. All right, since this is not a ton of torque, I can use my digital torque wrench. Remove the bolts. The rod bearing clearance for this engine is from 0.028 to 0.070 millimeters. And here we have around 0.050. And here, yeah, about the same. So that's right on the money. Again, it's not going to give us a precise number, but we know that we are within specification and that we can proceed. Now I'm going to push the piston down and put assembly lube on the upper bearing. All right. Wipe the crankshaft. Now the caps. Brand new bolts, and I'm going to use ARP fastener assembly lube underneath the head of the bolt, just a little bit to help us with the torque. This was a tip from a professional engine builder. So you gotta make sure it turns smoothly without any resistance whatsoever, that there's no like a tough spot or anything like that, and it just turns over beautifully. It turns like butter. And from here it's just copy paste for the other 6 cylinders. Beautiful. Done. Let's see that piston dance. Beautiful. Here's the rod bearing clearance that we have from 0.038 to 0.050, something in between, which is spot on. Brand new rear main seal. Clean up the surface. Fresh oil. That one we'll have to do once the engine is off the stand. The oil pump, the brand new pump that I bought for the previous engine has eaten some shavings, and as such I cannot use it. I need to disassemble it completely, clean it and inspect it, see if it's usable. That's gonna take forever, so we're gonna run the pump that came with this block that's clean and didn't have metal shavings in it. There's an O-ring here that we need to replace. Gasket here. I'm going to use the old pickup tube from the brand new pump because this rubber gasket is fresh and supple. Brand new Valley coolant pipe. New O-ring. A little bit of silicone grease. New plug here. Brand new timing chain and guides from the previous engine that I'm going to clean, and then we're going to install them one by one. Clean and lubed up chain. Thread locker. Now I'm going to install a new front crank seal. A little bit of oil. Just making sure it's sitting perfectly flush with the surface, which it is. And this is ready to be installed. Wipe the surface one more time. So the bolts are holding new gaskets. Crank hub. Time to do the upper oil pan. Bit of rinse seal where the covers meet. I'm gonna use a little bit more in the back because for some reason I always end up with an oil leak here. New gasket, clean oil pan, new gasket, I'm gonna put back the plugs here before I forget. I was planning to do the crank bolt now, but I forgot to order it. Just placed an order. Hopefully it comes soon, but in the meantime, we're gonna focus on the heads. We need to clean them, which is a major bummer and a waste of time because they are freshly refurbished heads. But because they were in the previous engine and we had metal shavings there, we need to take them apart completely, flush them, clean them, and then we can install them. All right. So we need to remove both camshafts, Voltronic magical stuff, rocker arms, hydraulic lifters, and then remove all of the plugs and flush the oil channels. So we need to rotate the exhaust camshaft until the lobes on cylinder number 2 are pointing upwards. All right, so all of the valves are closed. So it's very important that we put everything back in the exact same order. So all of the caps, they're numbered. Everything needs to go back where it was. Now I can take out the camshaft. Put it on the side. On the intake side, the lobes on cylinder 1 need to be pointing horizontal like this. We also need to clean the rocker arms and put them back in the same place as well. So I'm gonna start putting them in the back. All right, that's all of the lifters and rocker arms. So now I'm gonna go all around and remove all of the plugs that I see. Few on the front. I swear, these bolts are made to be stripped. Ready to reinstall. I'm gonna add a little bit of RTV where the front timing cover meets the block. This is per the repair manual. New head gasket. Brand new bolts with washers. So we're torquing from 1 to 10, the torque is 30 Newton meters, and then twice 90-degree angle. Second round. Second round. Bolts here. And that's cylinder head installation done. Now I'm gonna run to the dealer and pick up the crank bolt. This is the old one. And these are stretch bolts, so one-time use. Back from the dealer with a brand new bolt. Now you gotta torque that sucker. Slacking it off. The hub needs to have free movement. The torque for the crank bolt is 100 Newton meters first, and then 3 times 60-degree angle. All right, I'll go get some support for the engine. Massive X5 wheels will do. BBS, of course. That's one. That's the second one. Rusty pipe. Not sure if I'm going to be able to do this myself. Last time I needed a second person to stand there because it was lifting the entire engine stand. I think I made a bit better support now, so. Bit more. Perfection. The time has come to christen this block. Alpina stamped H1 on the block here, so we're gonna stamp our own name here. So I have punching tools, the letters and numbers. Let's see what this is going to look like. Hopefully I don't flip around this one. I need to practice somewhere. So if I do foof like that. I thought I was right on the money, but I'm not. The problem is you don't get the do-over with this. As long as I don't flip around the numbers, it'll be good. Oh, I flipped around the number. I knew it. Knew it. I was looking from the other side. Damn it. Because I was punching from the other side, the 3 looked like 3 from this side, but... Okay, M5039, and it's not aligned either. Really did make a mess here, man. All right, let's just say I intended to do whatever that is in between M5 and 39, and it doesn't line up either. Really disappointed, but it'll work. Brand new cover. Bolt here for the guide. Now you're gonna do the water pump. Putting back these check valves or whatever they are with brand new O-rings. I also cleaned them. Now you're gonna start reinstalling lifters and rocker arms. But first, oil. Plenty of it. Fill up the oil channels. I'm thoroughly cleaning them and then putting them in some oil. And now we can install them. And I'm gonna repeat that with every single one. Clean intake cam with Veltronic magical stuff. Make sure all the rocker arms are in place. Make sure the locks are closed and pointing up. The torque is 10 Newton meters and we're gonna do them up from inside to out. Now I'm gonna rotate the camshaft against the direction of rotation until the marks on the cam are pointing upwards. So the lobes on cylinder 2 need to point up. Rotate the cam. The lobe on cylinder number 1 needs to point under an angle like this towards the top of the cap. Eccentric shaft sensor. You're gonna copy paste on this side as well. And that's the camshafts done. Timing chain guide with a brand new gasket. Now the Vanos units. So we need to pull all the slack from the chain. Back out the bolts. It's time to time the engine. So the tool needs to sit perfectly flush on both sides. Then we have a special tool here instead of the tensioner. Now there's no slack in the chain and we can torque this bolt here. Hold the camshaft and torque. And you can see that the tool is sitting flush on both sides. Now remove the tool and do the same with the exhaust cam. Install the tensioner. Copy paste on bank DOS. All right, now we're gonna rotate the engine twice and verify that the timing is correct. It's one. Intake. Perfection. Exhaust. Perfect as well. Exhaust on this side. Yep, perfect here as well. Intake. And we're golden. The timing is set. We'll do it one more time for good measure. Beautiful. And the engine turns over. Great. New gasket. Oil sprayer bar, which I thoroughly cleaned as well. Spark plug tubes. RTV where the covers meet. On the half moons in the back as well. Valve cover with a brand new gasket going in. I'm using the valve cover from the donor engine because it has the CCV built into the valve cover. And that's better and easier to service than the whole stupid piping here. Spark plugs going in. Ignition coils. Cam position sensors. Replace the CCV diaphragm. Oh yeah, this one is actually cracked. So this is from the donor engine. Clean van of solenoids with brand new O-rings. Brand new vacuum pump. The old one was leaking. NOx sensors. Last time I've done them by hand, but it's important to torque them to proper spec. Although you can torque them by hand if you have good experience and good feel for it, that you don't over torque them and crush them. Now I'm gonna do the old supply line for the supercharger. New washers. Oil pressure switch, which is just a dummy switch. Alternator bracket with a brand new seal. Brand new oil thermostat. The old one was leaking, hence the new one. Coolant drain plug, good and tight. Oil dipstick. Uno, dos, tres. AC pump. Alrighty, rotisserie chicken 3.0 is ready to come off the engine stand. Craving some chicken right now. This engine better works. Actually, I'm not gonna say anything. Just shut up. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, there's a river nearby with Alpina's names on it. Watermelon picker. Gonna stand here, okay? One of these bolts is for the AC pump. This one. Had to borrow it, okay? Torque 2 Schrauben, yeah! I'm gonna go steal 2 plugs from the old engine. Imagine if I bolted everything and forgot those 2 plugs. That would be hilarious! Another plug here. Brand new one. Because of course you can't buy the O-ring separately. That wouldn't make sense. New coolant cover. Because again, the gasket is bonded to it. So you can't just replace the gasket. You gotta waste some metal too. Flex plate or the flywheel, whatever it's called. Medium thread locker. It's transmission mating time, and last time this guy took a big chunk of my thumb, so let's be careful now. I'll need more of that, what do you call it, creeper. I'm so strong. Torque converter bolts. The starter. And now the doglytic converters. New gaskets, and this bulge here goes towards the exhaust manifold. Thank you, Stratton from the past. Dogo number 1 going in. Let's grab the wiring harness. I think like that. Now we go back. It's not heavy, there's no engine. and transmission. It doesn't matter. Is it straight?
Good.
Yeah? No, the spoiler is very expensive.
Ach, it's not mine. Jetzt hättest du was anderes.
That was good. Thank you very much. This slot here is ready to go in. But first we're gonna replace the power steering reservoir. There's a built-in filter inside, and this was probably never replaced, so now we have plenty of space to do it. There's the washer. Here's the brand new one, and I also transferred over the hose. All right, let's go. Now I'm gonna bolt back the power steering pump, oil cooler lines, transmission line, new gringos. Let's put this thing back in. That power steering line. All right, no pinched lines. It's good. All right, let's connect the negative cable. Last time I struggled with that. I think she's in. Yep, sitting on the engine mount there and here as well. Beautiful. Nice. It's in. Now you're gonna go underneath and put the transmission support. So this will need to come out again when we do the drive shaft, so I'm not gonna torque it now to spec. That went in fairly smooth. A lot quicker than the last time. I think when I do this for the third time, I can be pretty drunk and still do it correctly. Gonna do torque converter bolts while I still remember. New O-ring for the AC line. That's the AC compressor hooked up. Of course. Gotta spill DNA. You just have to. Wouldn't be a project car if you didn't. I think now it's time for the intake. New gaskets. Plug that connector in the back. All right, make sure that the coils are plugged in correctly. And now this thing, the intercooler, should be much easier with the bumper out of the way. Yes, so that's the secret. Remove the front end. Yep, connected. New O-rings for the oil cooler lines. Oil cooler, and I'm reusing the previous one. That's because it's brand new. It only worked for 100 kilometers. And the thing is, big metal chunks, shavings, they can't end up in here because the oil first goes through the oil filter and then the oil cooler. Nonetheless, I used a ton of fresh fuel, petrol. I used a ton of brake cleaner, hit it with the rubber mallet, heat gun, and nothing was coming out of it. So there's no crap in it, and I feel comfortable reusing it. If it was a bit cheaper, I'd go for a new one, but 500, 600 euros, whatever this thing costs, just seems like such a waste. And besides, I don't even know if this engine is gonna work more than 200 kilometers, so I don't feel like wasting more money than I have to. Intercooler piping. Next, the Supercharger. Front Supercharger bolts are shorter than the rear ones. My custom CCV. So I used valve covers from the donor engine that have CCV built into the valve covers. Alpina and the facelift N62 have the CCV diaphragm located here, which is shitty design. It always leaks and breaks. This is much better. And since this line is discontinued, I'm just running a regular fuel hose, clamps, and that's gonna work just fine. And then cover comes on top of this and you're not gonna be able to see any of this. Very good, CCV done. Supercharger belt installed. I think that's everything hooked up. Now we can start adding fluids. Engine braking oil, I ended up doing more research on this topic and talking to expert BMW engine builders, and they all recommended that I run non-synthetic oil. So here we have 10W40 mineral oil from Liqui Moly, and that's what we're gonna run for the braking period. Reason being, full synthetic, it's very slippery. It actually provides a lot of protection. And since we used brand new piston rings, we need to allow some wear to happen in the cylinders so that the piston rings can bed in and create a perfect seal in the cylinders. And mineral oil, it's gonna do that. It's gonna allow that to happen, but at the same time, it's going to protect the bearings and all other important metal surfaces in the engine. On the previous engine, I did use full synthetic. That's because the shop that sleeved the block recommended that. But upon talking to more people and this additional research, I'm confident that mineral oil is the way to go. So we're gonna dump that in, then start the car. If it runs good, let it run until it reaches operating temperature. Immediately shut it down, drain the oil, put another round of this. Then go for a drive around 200 kilometers, if it makes it. Then come back, drain that oil again, another round of mineral oil, and then we're gonna do engine braking period of around 1,000 to 2,000 kilometers. I'll see how I feel about that, and in the meantime, we're gonna change the oil regularly. After that is done, then we're gonna run 5W50 full synthetic, and that should be it. That is, if the engine survives the braking period. That's the big one. I'm even going to use a funnel. Drink up. All right, that's good for now. Hydraulic fluid. And lastly, the coolant. All right, now I'm gonna hook up the laptop, clear all of the codes, reset Valvetronic adaptations, pull the fuel pump fuse, which I already did, disable the ignition coils, and then we can crank the engine over a couple of times to build oil pressure. I cleared the codes, reset the adaptations. Let's hear how the engine turns over. Sounds good. Let's check for immediate leaks. No leaks so far there. All right, now I'm gonna check all of the fluids and then crank it over some more. Oh yeah, that went down by a lot. That went down. That should do it. All right, go for it. Yeah. That's good. Thanks for the help. All right, that sounds good. Let's mount up the drive shaft, the exhaust, and then it's time to start it. Yes. The other three are already torqued as I didn't touch them. Now I can do the mount. Drive shaft done. New exhaust gaskets. Well, why don't you take the whole day? Drop another one. And with that, the installation of the exhaust is done. Here we go, the big moment. I'm probably not as nervous as the previous time, but I'm still very much nervous. My heart is racing. If this doesn't work out, maybe it's time to take a page out of Jessica Alba's book, start making makeup videos. Would you watch that? I'll show you what type of viscosity oil is best to rub on your face, what type of fogging oil for men to use to catch females. You know, the good, useful stuff. Why do people say, here goes nothing? Here goes everything. Here we go. What? Oh, yes. It seems that we have a working engine. What? It started good from the first try. No smoke, no check engine light. Are you already brand new? Oh, it might seem weird on camera, but it takes a lot of courage to press that button because everything goes away, everything, if you didn't do a good job. No smoke, exhaust sounds phenomenal. Even smells phenomenal. By the way, that's the perfume that I'm going to create. I'm gonna catch it in the bottle. There was a lady that was selling farts in the jar. I can sell you exhaust fumes from Alpina. Would you buy it? Smells better than farts, I can tell you that much. Little bit of throttle. The idle is going down. Stuff burning off, that's totally fine. But the engine sounds great. I think it sounds better than it did with the sleeved block. Quieter, smoother. Temperature is coming up. Perfect idle. No check engine light. No smoke from the exhaust. Sounds great. Some condensation, but that's normal. Let's give it a few revs. Perfect. Whoa, we need power steam fluid. It does sound better than before, I gotta admit that. It sounds better now than it did with the sleeve block. Very, very smooth. It's not shaking. Well, no drips yet. Where are we at with the temperature? 82, that's good. So when it reaches around 90, shut it down. I wanna drain that oil immediately. Because as much as I was careful with the engine rebuild, there's always gonna be some crap in it, and we wanna change that oil immediately. I know I'm celebrating prematurely, should know better given the experience with the previous engine, but this is a victory nonetheless. The fact that it's running and not knocking. So I gotta savor the moment. A lot of work went into it. Again, we reached the operating temperature. Now I'm gonna shut it down. Oil leaks, where are you? No oil leaks thus far. Anyway, let's drain the oil. So I'm expecting to see some glitter in the oil because brand new piston rings are going to scrape up the cylinders. And that should be the case until they bed in. Right. Let's see, some glitter, yes, normal, but no big metal chunks. Pre-lubed oil filter. Now I'm going to start it again, drive it back and forth just to make sure the transmission works, the car drives, and then shut it off promptly. I don't want it to idle in the spot at all, so in the next episode we're going to put the front end back on and go straight for the test drive. It's best to break it in by actually driving the car and get the RPMs going instead of it idling in the spot. Last time I wasn't able to do that because of the faulty fuel injectors that I had to troubleshoot, but this time around we are going straight for the test drive. Starts good. Reverse. Very good. Don't break the mirror. This is great. All right, we have a running and driving Alpina B7. The engine still sounds sweet. So let's shut it down. As we learned with the previous engine, it's way too early to start celebrating, but nonetheless, Alpina is back. It sounds great. It's not knocking, at least not yet. So in the next episode, we're gonna go for that test drive. I'm feeling optimistic, so we're gonna go for 200 kilometers. If it survives, come back, change the oil, and then start doing the final tasks for German tooth inspection, headlights, taillights, and at the same time, we're gonna refurbish the rims and the steering wheel. And then I'm waiting on some technical documents, papers, and stuff that the inspector needs in order to inspect the car. And then she's ready. But I'm gonna wait with the paint and cosmetical stuff, interior, until I put 1,000 to 2,000 kilometers on the car, make sure it survives, and it makes sense for me to invest more time and money in it. But I'm feeling great now, and I know this was repetitive content because I had to rebuild this engine not once, but twice. Hopefully I don't have to do it for the third time because I'm not sure if I'm gonna be able to do it. I'd rather push it into the river, but then again, I'd go to jail because I'm gonna be polluting the said river with a massive turd. So maybe set it on fire. Can't do that either. Thank you very much for following along, watching these videos, commenting. This project was just such a roller coaster. It's pretty incredible. Anyway, I love you all, and I'll see you very soon. Adios.